All right. So this next guest, I actually met in person. There's a very cool little bookstore down near my mom's, down in Ormond Beach, near Daytona Beach. And we went and checked it out a couple weeks ago, me and my wife. And I was like, I like this place. This cool little feel to it. And then so I follow him on Facebook, and then I see that John David's going to be there. You know, I see author, I see thriller in person. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take the ride down. Glad I did. You had a few people in the place. It's nice because it's small. You got chairs, you got nice places to sit and everything, and you got to do your little spiel, and you got to sell some books. So it was first off, it was great meeting you, and thanks for popping
Thanks
on
so much.
Here.
My pleasure. So I'll give you the proper plug, the Novelty Bookshop.
Yes,
Novelty Bookshop in Ormond Beach.
Yes.
So very
Good.
lovely,
I'm sure they'll have other
lovely little place.
Yes. So you came all the way up from Miami, the Miami area there. So that was a haul for you.
Yeah, it was. But you know what? It's funny. I've reached out. So you know, listen, getting an booking author events is it's a trick, man. And I've none of them they're hard to nail down. And Stephanie at the Novelty Bookstore. I mean, I sent her an email and talking about my book, and she said, "Yeah, I'd love to have you." And I was like, "Okay." Like one email, you know, she saw my book, she was interested. I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." So
yeah.
So I'll make the run, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. So which is pretty cool because in today when I talk to a lot of authors, they've kind of steered away from the book signing. You know,
Okay.
go to a place or go to a book signing conference or a convention or any of those things, and it's just like I'm just going to do everything online. And I still like the, you know, face to face. I get to meet somebody. I get to have them sign my book in front of me and hand me a book.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I think you have to do whatever you can as an author, right? You have to try to me, in my opinion, I have to get in front of readers. I'm a debut novelist, and so I have to do whatever I can do to get in front of readers. I think some of these things are a little bit trickier. I mean, you know, if I'm going to an event and it's you know 9 hours at a table in a convention center, that one I think might be a little bit harder for me. I'm not sure if I'm interested in that as much.
Right.
You know, there's a whole that, but to go and kind of be the focus for an hour or whatever, and then have an opportunity to, you know, to really talk about my book and talk to readers. I think that's got to be worth it. I mean, I've got my own arc of how far I'm willing to go. I mean, I'm the bottom of Florida. I'm kind of, you know, that's about as far as I'm willing to go, willing to drive.
Right.
You know, I'm not really ready to drive to Pensacola or Mobile or you know,
Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle or Charleston or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'll if I can kind of get up and back, you know, in a day or make a stop someplace. You know, like you know, you saw your mom in Ormond Beach, right? So you made you double dipped, and so I got a couple things like that planned out that I can go and do something else, visit a relative, stop on the way back from something else, and so make it work.
That's a good thing. So where did the idea for the book come from originally? And then tell everybody about the book.
Sure. The idea for the book came about after it was about 3 years ago, actually, and I was watching the news. There was a story about an event in Indiana. There was it was a mass shooting event. Basically, it was but the bad guy went into a mall in Indiana, and he killed 3 people, which is horrible. But he was taken out by an armed bystander. So there was a guy in the food court at the mall in Indiana who was there having lunch, and he was a marksman, has a concealed carry permit. He was carrying his gun, and he took out his gun and he shot and killed the active shooter. Mm-hmm. And I was just fascinated by that conceptually, you know, and on lots of different levels, because one is you know, I have my own sort of opinion about guns. I'm not anti-gun. I'm not like whatever pro-gun or whatever. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in our right to bear arms and all those things. But at the same time, you watch something like that happen, you hear about something like that happening, you're going, man, is this the way it's supposed to be? Is that the way it's supposed to be? Are we supposed to be like, policing ourselves in that way? And it just brought up a lot of thoughts for me, and I had been having a lot of conversations about gun rights and Second Amendment issues and all that stuff. And plus I have, friends who know a lot about guns and know a lot about these issues, and I've had a lot of spirited conversations about it. And it just that was the initial spark of the idea. The idea was like, imagine, you get this idea, okay, an armed gunman gets taken out by a bystander, and what would happen? What could happen? How could that be? What could that backstory really be? And that's where the idea for the novel came out.
Very cool. So had you thought before about writing stories, writing books, or had you started stuff? It's
interesting you bring that I kind of, it's a natural question. So I have always written in my life, but I've always written professionally, like, corporate I'm a public relations consultant by trade. So corporate copy, marketing copy, stuff like that. And I've always thought, maybe I could write a novel, but I never really had the time, I think, is part of it. And I never really thought I had the talent. I knocked around a few things many years ago. But really what triggered it for me was I have two kids who are in their early 20s, and once they went away to college, like I had kind of more time on my hands, and I started to read novels again. I used to read a lot of novels back before I got married, when I was single. And then, you get married, and when you get married, things start to change, I got married and my golf game, went to crap. Right. And so I also really stopped reading novels, and I used to still read like business stuff, and I'd read nonfiction stuff when I was on vacation. But then I kind of rediscovered novels after my kids went away to college. And then I got this idea, and I said, listen, I'm just going to try to do this. And that's kind of my personality. I kind of give it a shot, see what I can do. And that's where it came from. It was kind of just being a student of reading a lot of mystery novels and, thriller novels and stuff like that. And just saying, maybe I can do this. I'm going to give it a shot.
Right. And you were saying you went through a lot of rejections initially.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I started the process of pitching, of the querying process, where you reach out, you've written your book, you've gotten to the place where you think it's good enough to send it to agents, and then you have to start reaching out to agents, and it's a slog. It is like you have to, and I stopped counting at something like 180. I'd sent out, and it's, you basically, you're sending an email, or there's some automated software out there that agents are connected to. There's a portal or whatever platform for reaching out to literary agents. But I had a spreadsheet, and it was detailed and it was color coded. But it was not successful. So it took a long time, but then I started pitching, small publishers directly, and that's where I started to get some traction, and that's who I ultimately signed with.
So. Right. Which is great, especially for a first novel. I mean, a lot of us, me included, we have 5 trunk novels. We wrote those first 5 books, and they just didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, no, I was fortunate that I got picked up, and I would have, and I was already sort of thinking about like what my next move was, and if I was gonna try to write something else and all that, I'd started and stopped, the second novel during this whole process, several times.
So when you sign with a publisher, do you sign for the one book, or is it a 2-3 book deal?
So my publishing company is called Tule, Tule. They're based in California, and they're big on the series. So they have a mystery imprint, and they like their authors to write a series. So I agreed to write a 3-book series. I mean, it could be more, I guess, over time, but I'm contractually obligated to deliver 3 books. the second one is done, and I'm working on the third at the moment. So
is
they
there
like the series from a marketing standpoint. They kind of
well,
think
yeah,
it's
it's
hard to
easier.
get. And it's hard to get very hard to get traction for standalones, I think.
Yeah. So for you as a writer, you take your time, you write this first book, you do all the queries, you get a publisher, boom, first book, and they say we want 2 more now. Is there at any point, be honest, is there any point where you're like, the panic sets in, like, holy crap, now I got to deliver 2 more books?
Well, yes, I'll be honest. Yes, like I'm probably like close to that right now, and because I've delivered the third book's due in like January, and I'm and it's there's a lot to be done before that. I started it, but I'm not as far along as I want to be. I'd started writing what became the second book. I started writing it shortly after I finished the first one, and I've started it. I rewrote it a couple of different ways. I went through a few different gyrations with it. So the second book wasn't quite as daunting, because I was kind of already, I don't know, 20% through it, or 20. I was a quarter of the way done, and I knew what the story was. I knew which direction I wanted to go with it. So the second one wasn't as daunting, and I had plenty of time. And then now I'm working on the third one, and the clock's ticking, but I know what it's going to be. So, but I've had moments where I said, well, why did I agree to 3? Why did I agree to 2? And then just like, I could leave it open. I could have I could just be I could be, waiting on, but they were pushing pretty hard for the 3.
That's good. And then obviously the hope is you either continue in this series, or you come up with another idea for a different series.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think the series has potential to go long, but I don't, we'll see, we'll
Right.
see how it does, and what people think and all that.
So how often are you booking appearances now with this?
So I've booked about a half a dozen so far, and there was I've kind of got 3 in October that are kind of back to back, kind of a Sunday, Tuesday, Saturday-ish kind of thing going on, and then I've got one more in November, and then everything sort of shuts down in November, event wise. I got another event scheduled in January. So for the Florida people, I'm going to be in Orlando on I think the 19th. It's a Sunday. I'm going to be in Delray Beach, be in Coral Gables. I'm going to be in Coral Springs, and then I'm going to be in Mount Dora in January.
Okay.
I feel like got my stand-up comedian, or I'm the local band.
Exactly. So would you ever look at something like like the Miami Book Fair or something?
Well, I applied for the Miami Book Fair. To be a panel, and I have not yet heard back. I think they're getting ready to announce all the authors. I'm not sure if I'm going to be on it. So I applied for it. They have like a writer's row if you want to kind of pay your own way and do that. But I didn't sign up for that. So that would be like all day, like an all day Saturday, all day Sunday type of thing. And you have to just kind of want to do that. So
yeah, I'm about done with the all weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You're sitting behind a table for 3 straight days.
Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine that's gonna be tough. So they're doing one in Delray Beach down here, and it's I think it's 2 hours, or it might be 3 hours, 2.5 hours, something like that, at the library on a Sunday. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. I'll go do that.
I love those.
I'll do 2 hours. I'll do 2 hours, but yeah, to sit all day, you just it's and then what happens if you sell 3 books? Then you're sitting all day and you sell 3 books, and it's like, it's hard enough to be an author. Why have the soul crushing experience? Why have it be soul crushing in person?
Sitting at a table by yourself. I've done that many times. I always try to get somebody. I'm doing an event in a couple of weeks, and it's a Sunday matinee. It's an acoustic punk rock show.
Oh boy. Okay.
And I know one of the guys in the bands, and he's like, "Hey, come sell your horror books." and I'll give you a table and everything. It's 1 to 4. And I'm like, you know what? Can I invite another author?
Right.
So I invited one of my other buddies who's a horror author, and we're just so no matter what, at least the two of us will be sitting there talking and listening to music.
Right.
But for 3 hours, I can do it.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. 100%.
All right, so here's my last couple questions for you.
Yep.
First one is 2 or 3. Who are some of the thriller authors that inspired you? I guess especially once you started picking up fiction again.
Well, I thought about this because I think for me there's probably a couple of that are really inspired me over time. So I first thing is I old enough to remember when The Firm came out. John Grisham, and that was a book that if you probably recall, everybody was reading it, right? It was one of those things that was like a phenomenon, that everybody was reading it. I remember vividly a friend of mine who was at a banking conference, and she says, "Yeah, no one's at the conference. Everyone's in their hotel room reading The Firm," and so I was greatly influenced by Grisham, particularly his earlier stuff. He's written 30,000 novels now, but his first ones, and then the local angle, Carl Hiaasen is another is a great author that I've always really enjoyed. He's a Miami. He was the Miami Herald columnist for a long time, and then wrote these books that were all based in in Miami and the Keys and all that. And I think he helped me define that you can do something and you can be funny. Try to be funny. Right. I'm trying to be funny. I'm not sure how funny I am, but I try to be funny. Try to be interesting. The satire angle. I don't have that. I'm not. He's carved kind of his own lane in that world. Yeah. But those are probably 2 big influences on me as a writer, for sure. And then I think as we get to more recent. More recently, I think Anthony Horowitz, big one. Richard Osman, it's a big one.
Yeah.
Thursday Murder Club and all that, and just funny. Just quick. Page turner, quick, funny, amusing. Like those are a couple that I think are really good.
Right.
So,
who are the authors that you think more people need to read? Maybe some of the newer people coming up, and some you've discovered.
Yeah, I would say the ones, you prepped me on this question too, so I thought about this one too. So I deliberately did not name these other ones first. So one who is one of my comps in my pitch is Catherine Steadman. I don't know if you've read any of her stuff.
Yeah.
She's written I think she's written 3 or 4 novels, but she wrote one that was really inspirational for me is called Something in the Water. And Something in the Water is about a couple that's on vacation somewhere in the Far East or whatever, in Bali or something like that. And they go out, they rent a boat, and they're out on the boat, and they hit something on the boat, and it turns out it's like this duffel bag, and they open it up, and it's a duffel bag, it's full of money, and a cell phone and a couple other things, whatever. And it's a great mystery. It has a lot of twists and turns to it. And the reason that I like it so much is that I think so frequently authors feel like they have to write, that if they're going to write a mystery, that it's got to be a murder mystery. And it's and so frequently you see authors, they're asked a question, they go, well, once I figure out how the person's got killed, then I write the murder mystery. And to me, it's like, but wait a second, there's like this whole thing of why constrain yourself to your mystery having to be a murder, right? I mean, so that's one. Catherine Steadman, she also wrote one called Mr. Nobody. And that's a bit of a ripped from the headlines type of a story. It's very, very clever. So I like her. And one who's pretty well known, but also I think just really good at her craft is T.J. Newman. T.J. Newman, her. She wrote Falling was her debut novel, which again, another great premise. So Falling is about she was before she was writing, but before she was published, she was working as a flight attendant, and she came up with this premise of, what if you're the pilot of a airliner and you find out that basically terrorists have kidnapped your family, and they say either you have to crash the plane or we're going to kill your family. And just a great premise, cool premise. And what makes her great, I think, is her books are just meticulously researched. A lot of it has to do with the stuff she knows because of what she does,
Right.
But she's branched out into a couple of other things and still follows that sort of heavy research path. And so she's more of a pure thriller writer who I think a lot of people would like, because they're just her books clip along. They cook, and they come up, and again, it's not just somebody's dead, how'd they get killed, right? It's and again, that's a whole world, the cozy mystery, whatever. I'm not trying to step on it, but I just think that we, you as authors, you can really constrain yourself if we're already constrained, right? So why constrain yourself further by saying, okay, I have to start this off with figuring out how somebody got whacked, So.
True. Very true. All right. Well, hopefully people will see you out there. Good luck with the second and the third book.
I appreciate that.
If you're ever up in the Jacksonville area, then let me know.
For sure. For sure.
Hopefully you'll be up here doing quite a few bookstores up here and different things that are always looking for authors. So.
Well, yeah, I've tried. I've reached out to a couple of them. I haven't had no traction yet, but hey, maybe this will put me over the top. Jacksonville.
There you go.
So,
all right, John. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Armand.